You're listening to the Sales Today podcast, and I'm your host, Fred Copestake. On this podcast, we explore how sales professionals can develop a modern approach to winning business, the application of virtual selling techniques, how to create meaningful business relationships, and much more. Why not take our free collaborative selling scorecard to see how your sales approach suits today's environment? You'll find a link in the show notes.
So, why would people not want to get involved in ethical selling? Well, it's something to do with what I call the Goldilocks dilemma. The Goldilocks dilemma. So Goldilocks and the Three Bears, if you know that, you know the story where she comes in and she has the porridge and it's too hot, too cold, just right. Same with ethical selling, apart from we say it's too hard, too soft, and then just right. So when we're talking about too hard, what we're saying here is that people say, oh, it's too difficult. It's going to be expensive. We're going to need new processors. We're going to have to do a whole bunch of new training. Where we're saying, yeah, well, we've already done a whole bunch of sales skills. We've put MedPick in place. Now we're going to have to do a whole bunch of other things. Oh, and then people change. We don't want to do this. It's just not worth it. Wrong. The too soft side is when people say, yeah, but does that mean we're going to become really passive? Yeah, we're going to just kind of lose all, kind of not be assertive. We're going to be like total pushovers. We're going to have to be transparent. So we're going to give people all our costs. We're going to lose a ton of money. No, also not true. Yeah, there is a just right. Yeah, there is absolutely a just right version. Yeah, and that is what I'm going to talk to you about. Yeah, because when we get this right, it is all about achieving win, win, win. Now, I suspect I'm going to a little skim down of the profiles and who you guys are there in chat. And you'll have come across win-win before, I'm pretty sure. So win-win-win, what's that about? So for me, it is customers got to win. Yep, same as. Companies got to win, okay? But also your own conscience as a salesperson. Now, you've got to be comfortable and happy with the way in which you're going about doing stuff. So just in that little bit of depth, so we know the customer win, the customer's got to be comfortable. You'll hear me talk a little bit later about buyer safety. I'd say that's probably one of the biggest wins we should get for the customer, as well as the outcomes that they're looking for. Yeah, people buy outcomes. So to do this, we've got to deliver clarity for them. We've got to help them make sense of that confusing world. And this isn't about being clever, being difficult, or kind of, taking the wrong focus. We want to deliver that for them. And there could be that there's a kind of an ethical element of compliance, that there's certain things we have to do to sell to certain organizations. We've probably seen that. When we're talking about your company, well, yeah, we're in it for revenue. That is why we do what we do. So, but if we look at some of the stuff that ethical selling is telling us, it is best practice. Yeah, it's the best way to go about doing business, and then we get repeat business. We can build a whole bunch of respect for the way in which we do things. So the image in the market, why people want to work for us. Life becomes easier as we're starting to prospect and market out there. Yeah? And so yes, there is a return on investment that if there is a little bit of extra effort, and I don't really believe there is that much, if you're pretty confident and competent about what you do, then actually you're probably doing a lot of the stuff that makes a difference anyway. So then we've got this win for your conscience. So this is the thing that I sort of say, it's like looking in the mirror and being able to say, I've had a good day today. I've acted with integrity, been decent. There's no harm in what I've been doing today. I can be proud of myself. That's the mirror test. Yeah, and what I'm doing, it matters. I'm making a difference. Yeah, there's a bit of purpose behind what I do. I'm aligned. So it doesn't always feel like work. When you're aligned to what it is that you're doing, life is so much easier. Yeah, that motivation kicks in. This intrinsic motivation comes from inside, where we're thinking that, yeah, you know what? I'm doing something decent here. So that's what we're talking about with the win-win-win as the simplest way to define ethical selling. That's the simplest way. Now, if I go into the what bit and we go into a kind of a bit more of a deeper definition, so we talk about ethical selling referring to conducting sales and marketing activities in a morally principled, socially responsible manner. So it's about honesty, transparency, integrity, focus on best interests, customer, and broader society. So yeah, it's a bit of a textbook definition, slightly longer even in the book, but look, we can talk about that. Yeah, so it gets us to think about ethics. Yeah, so what are ethics? Well, these are the principles that govern a person's behavior or the way in which they go about an activity. We often talk about medical ethics, don't we? So then we can start talking about the difference between morals and ethics. So ethics tend to be external. So these will be like codes of conduct, the way in which we've signed up to do stuff. And morals will tend to be more of our own principles. So we get into the discussions of right and wrong. I got very, very aware of this when I was writing the book and thought, hang on a minute, this isn't the direction I want to go. I don't want to go off up into the blue sky talking about morals and principles and values and rights and wrongs, because I don't think it will help salespeople. There are some people who will love talking about that. Brilliant. That's a great, sat by a fire, glass of whiskey, having a chat about that stuff. But what I wanted to do was to go very tactical. I believe that ethical selling can be tactical. I've had arguments with people about this. No, it can't be. It's all principles. There's no tactics involved. Tactics are how you implement something. Tactics how you apply what it is that you know. The more tactical we can make it, the easier it is for salespeople to grasp it. Then they're going to go and do it, and we get that win-win-win. So that was the route I decided to take. That was very deliberate choice in writing the book. Tiny little piece about the ethics and morals, but really it was about breaking stuff down into what we can do. What can we actually do? Again, those that know me know I love a model. I do like a model. It makes stuff easier to hang stuff on. It gets us a kind of a way in which we can put things into categories so that we can grasp it faster, apply it quicker, get the results straight away. And that's what the ethical model does. ETHICAL. I'm also quite literal. And that's what we've got here. So the ethical model, what does it break down into? So there's areas in which we can focus on certain best practices, tools, techniques, tactics. Yeah, so empathetic communication, transparency and integrity, holistic value-centric approach, informed decision-making, collaborative relationship building, adaptive negotiation, learning and growth. Okay, 7 things. I've promised you 7 ways in which we can close more deals ethically. I'm going to pick one bit, sometimes it's 1.5, but hey, one bit from each of those so that we can think about, well, yeah, I can take that and apply it. Or even better, I am actually already doing that. Happy days, result. That is what we're looking for. So let's get into the how bit. Let's really get into the how. I'm going to break these down piece by piece. So empathetic communication. This is all about engaging in active dialogue to understand customer needs and wants. The tactic I am picking from this is questioning skills. Yeah, questioning skills. For me, it's such a foundational skill in all types of selling. Best salespeople are able to ask great questions. They understand questioning tools. They understand how to form them, what they're forming them for, what they're trying to achieve with them. There's various models around it, but let's talk at tool level. I'm going to give you 8 tools. So first tool is open questions. Open questions, these are ones which give you a variable answer. They're the what, why, when, where, who, how questions. Yeah, as those of you who know the Rudyard Kipling poem, I keep 6 honest serving men who taught me all I knew. Their names were what and where and why, and when and how and who. It's how you learn. That was from the elephant child, how the little elephant child learns. So we want to ask those because when we ask them, people will give more information. And there is something else going on here. I believe that sales is changing to the point that salespeople, we are there for decision support. And so we are there as sense makers. And so when we're asking a good question, we're helping people to think. We're giving them that clarity. So open questions are cracking for that. Now we might ask a closed question. These are the yes, no answers. We want some kind of confirmation. If you're up and running and chatting, people probably tend to talk through those anyway, but sometimes we want a yes or no, we need a definitive on it. Lots of people get trained in that. Great. And if they're recognizing and using those consciously, if they've never come across it before, we see an instant uptake or an instant improvement. Now, what I would also talk to people about are some other ways of forming questions. So we have TED questions. So these are probing questions. So type 3, probing, TED. Tell me, explain, describe. Technically, it's a command, but it's a way of asking a question so that people will elaborate more. Again, very fast way of improving a sort of probably a newer salesperson. Open question to start with. When you hear the answer, listen to it, and then tell me more about that. Explain what you mean. Describe how that works. See an instant improvement. Probing questions. Another way of changing the angle of the question is a hypothetical question. Hypothetical. Language pattern, if. If you had a limited budget, if you were the big boss of the company, if we were working 2 years from now and everything was going really well, what would we do? The if, the hypothetical, it breaks people out of stuck in the box thinking. So they're quite useful. Next one, summary. Summary question. So repeating back, paraphrasing, just check in that you've understood, but that also the customer's understood what they've said. This type of question. Could end up as a yes or no. So I think what you've told me is this, is this, is this, is this. Correct? So we can do that. Now actually we can ask a question by saying nothing. Silence. Silence. Letting people think, particularly if you've asked a good question, and to fill that vacuum, fill that space. But then it's a good idea if you're going to do that, particularly if you're working virtually, to give some kind of non-verbal communication, some kind of body language to show that you are listening and to encourage people to give that response. Making notes, whatever it is, to encourage them. And yes, I'm taking you seriously here. Final one, promised 8, is a high gain question. So now we're moving to a slightly different level of questioning skills. We're into a bit more expertise here, which this is a very well-formed question based on some research that you've done on the customer, insights that you start to put together about them. That's a planned question that's gonna get them thinking deeply. Might have its roots in open, probably gonna have its roots in a hypothetical, but it shows you've done your homework and it really gets people thinking deeper. It's a high gain question. We start moving into other questioning patterns. But sake of speed, I want to talk about questions. I want to give those 8 questioning tools. Okay, cool. Next section is transparency and integrity. So this is all about operating with honesty, clarity, providing accurate information. So here, the thing I'm going to pick is actually from a fellow trainer, a guy called Todd Capone. Todd, cracking chap, wrote an excellent book called The Transparency Sale. So of course I'm going to pick from that if I'm talking about transparency. He's also written Transparency Leader and just recently a book about negotiation. But when I interviewed him on the podcast, he was talking to me about a tactic. Yeah? He's comfortable with tactics as well. Like, people can use them. The tactic he was talking about was lead with a flaw. F-L-A-W. F-L-A-W, a flaw, a fault. And short version is that rather than trying to say how brilliant we are at absolutely everything, sometimes it makes sense for us to say, do you know if this is the most important thing for you, we probably aren't the best option, and I could point you somewhere else. But if this, 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 and this are also high on your agenda, then absolutely, this is why we need to keep talking and we need to sort of uncover how that stuff's going to work for you. It's very disarming. It's super transparent. It's a shortcut to building trust because so many people won't do that. It'll be a refreshing change for the customer. They'll think, well, wow, okay, I wasn't expecting that, and you didn't need to do it. So thinking about situations where you can be quite deliberate at doing that, again, I would advise that it's when you've done your research and know that it's more than just this they want, and they do need this, 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 and this, then actually it makes sense to do that. So that's a quick one on transparency, lead with the flaw. Okay, so next up is the holistic value-centric approach. So this is prioritizing a way of working that focuses on the customer value and desired outcomes. So what I'm picking here is, again, it's from another colleague, a guy called Mike Wilkinson, who said to me once, what it was, we were traveling somewhere, let's have on a plane, I think, and we were chatting away, and he said, because of course, Fred, value is a mystery. And I said, yes, Mike. What do you mean, Mike? And it's all this mystery. You don't know what it is. Customer probably doesn't know what it is either. Our job is to understand that mystery, is to solve that problem, is to work on it together. Now, there's a bunch of tools and techniques that we can do that. But I think it starts with this mindset that I can't just march in there. Yeah, look, I might have a value proposition, something to get us going. I might have a hypothesis. Yeah, I might have an intelligent assumption I'm going to use to kickstart stuff based on the insight, the stuff that I've been doing to think about this company and what's going on in their world. But I'm going to use that to prime the pump, and then off we go by really co-creating, collaborating on this to work this stuff out. So that's what I'd be saying is the smart thing to do in here. It's value is a mystery and we don't know what it is. If we're rocking in and starting to lecture people in it, it's where we're likely to make a mistake. So it's thinking about stuff slightly differently, thinking about stuff together. Again, reasonably quick one. Next one I want to talk about is informed decision making. Informed decision making. So this is all about ensuring customers can make decisions with the right information and respecting their autonomy. So here, the key concept is buyer safety. I mentioned this once already, but so buyer safety, we've got to have them comfortable. We've got to protect them. They've got to feel safe. They've got to feel psychologically safe in working with us. Yeah, they get the choice. It's got to be easy for them to say no if that's the right thing for them to say. This is about going against the grain of that horrible sales stereotype of pressuring people to push them into doing something that suits us rather than them. We've got to give them that freedom of choice. They have got to be able to decide. Now, if we've done our job well and we've helped them to think and we've worked through their buying process, I think it's something else that we miss quite a lot in sales now. We get obsessed with our selling processes and trying to do sales to people rather than go, well, let's align to the stuff that they're doing anyway. That's where we're going to be more valuable. And then we can give them this freedom of choice. So there is a cracking way to do this. When I first started sales training 25 years ago, the course that I inherited had this bunch of closes. I think it was 30 closes that the participants had to learn overnight. And they came in next day and we'd read out the close and they'd have to write down what sort it was. Yeah. Do you want to have that in red or blue? Alternative close. Yeah. So we'll deliver this to you before Christmas, and that means, it's the assumptive. You don't need those. You don't need them anymore. There's one close that I now train. It's called the perfect close. And I learned this from a guy called James Muir. Again, James, another podcast guest, came on, discussed this book where I asked him, why are you writing a book about closing? It's 2021, mate. Come on, it's a bit 80s, isn't it? And he goes, well, no, you still need to get commitment to the next part of the sale. That's what it's all about. Okay, yeah, I'll give you that. I said, but why is it perfect then? He said, well, because it's 95% effective. Really? Wow. He said, well, you've got to do the rest of the selling right, but yeah. I said, well, how do you know? He goes, because I've studied millions of calls. And there's this language pattern that works really well. I'm like, oh, wow. Tell me what it is. He says, right, okay, you've got to be very deliberate in the way you ask this. You've got to do something right. You can't just rock up and ask it. But the language pattern is, does it make sense for us to? So you can see this is a low pressure close. You're not pushing anybody towards it. You're not kind of intimidating them into something. Yeah, we're checking whether it's right to be moving on. We're keeping that buyer safety in place. Because it's a closed question. There's a yes or no answer. Does it make sense for us to submit a proposal and come back and present it to you next week? Yes. Oh, happy days. I'll do that then. No. Ah, what do you think the next step is? Well, I think we should probably go and speak to our FD first. Oh, right, all right then. Okay, well, let's set that up. So what we're doing is we're mapping ourselves onto their buying process. We're keeping things moving forward. We're also keeping control to a degree because we're predicting what we think should be the next obvious step, which is especially true if we're selling something that people aren't used to buying. We might be selling something that is just, it's not a normal purchase for them. They need that help. They need that guidance. We could take advantage of it. We're not going to do that. We're going to make sure they're comfortable and safe as we're moving that forward. So that's why I really like that way of operating when we're talking about this informed decision-making element of ethical selling framework. So next part, collaborative relationship building. So it's about thinking like a partner to build deeper, longer lasting relationships. It's what my first book was about. Really, that was kind of the main thrust of that, in the way in which we start to approach the sales thinking like a partner, whether it is a partnership or not. So it doesn't have to be a formal business alliance, but we think like this, it changes how we operate. Now we do things in a way more akin to be collaborative. So think like a partner. That's the key for this bit. That's the bit that I'm picking for the collaborative relationship building element. And what I talked about in the book is that there are 6 elements of PQ. PQ is partnering skills. So it's the lesser known cousin of IQ and EQ. I didn't invent it. A guy called Steve Dent researched a lot of this stuff about the same time that EQ was really coming to the fore, late 80s, early 90s. And so what the elements of PQ are, I was looking at because I was thinking particularly about channel, actually. I was thinking particularly about IT sales, as it happens. And I looked at this and thought, well, this is every sale, isn't it? This is every sale with a modern context. Because when you look at these and you break them down and you bake them into the way in which you're operating, it can only be better for both parties and you. So then we're going to get win-win-win. I hadn't quite made the leap to win-win-win at that stage. I was on my journey. So what are these 6 elements? So, okay, first one is trust. That's foundational relationships. First thing that we want to be establishing. I've talked about fast tracks to trust. So if we can build trust, we can do a better job. We do that by focusing on a win-win outcome. Okay, win-win-win now, I've said that. Yeah. We do this by recognizing interdependence. Inter, not independence, inter. Easiest way to think about this. Your success is my success. That's how a salesperson should be thinking. If I make the customer successful, then I'm successful. Yeah. What are the outcomes they're looking for? What are the results? Yeah. When we start thinking like that and we make them successful, that's going to be better for us. Often we might be working with a bigger team as well. So we've got to be interdependent with our own company as well. So there's a kind of a 2-win on that. Steve Dent talked about self-disclosure and feedback. Now I will tend to use the word transparency. Just feels a bit more modern. It feels a bit easier for people to get their head around. But it involves like giving information about people and yourself, yeah, feeding stuff back. So transparency, another key part. We've got to be comfortable with change. We sell change. We sell change. We want people to do things differently. We want them to do different things. We've got to be comfortable with change. If we're not, how can we really be in a position to ask others to? And when we understand change and how people react to it, then we're in a very strong position. Because typically we might see that the outcomes they're going to get, they're brilliant for them. Look at that. How wonderful is this going to be? But a reaction to change could be sorrow, anger, rejection. That could be anger. People don't want to change. They get fed up by the fact they're going to have to do something different. We're banging on as a salesperson about how great this thing is, but actually they're thinking, I don't really want to. It's a right pain in the neck. So we've got to recognize where people are on that change curve so that we can adapt and get our messaging right. And another element of this is future orientation. So we're looking towards what it is that we're trying to achieve and then building plans and building what we're doing towards that, making decisions based on that future orientation. Think like a partner. That's what we're talking about in collaborative relationship building. Okay, moving on, we've got the penultimate one here, which is adaptive negotiation. Adaptive negotiation. So this is approaching negotiation ethically and using flexibility to drive those win-win outcomes. So a lot of talk at the moment around a negotiation and different approaches. Yeah, we've got the Harvard principled approach that's been around a long time, getting to yes. Yeah, and then there's a lot of people in the world of sales who are loving the whole never split the difference thing, Chris Voss approach. Yeah, I have opinions on that. Yeah, I like a lot of stuff in it, but also it's based on crisis negotiation, which I believe is different to commercial negotiation. But I don't mean we can't take things from it. And so it's one of the benefits of being someone who's agnostic about this stuff is I'm having the best bits. And that's what that chapter of the book takes. It's like bits on there, and I call it an adaptive approach. But the bit I'm taking for today, I promise you these 7 things, it's the 15-second negotiation training. If you, then I. If you, then I. Negotiation is all about swapsies. Swapsies. And when we were kids, we used to swap stuff, trading cards, sweeties, Pokemons, I don't know, whatever it is. But they weren't always exactly the thing that you would swap. So we've got to work out the level of the value of the thing that you're going to swap compared to the thing that you want back. We do that prep, and then we use this language pattern where we're making sure that we put what the other party has to do with what we're willing to do. So we're always looking for an interchange, a trade, rather than a gift. If we're just dropping out discounts, if we're just giving things away, people will keep taking from us. So we've got to look at how we can integrate that if you, then I thinking. That's a core part of negotiation. Another big part is the prep to do that. And then recognizing some of the tactics and gambits that might go on in there as we're starting to get to that point of agreement. And yeah, and don't forget, negotiation is actually trying to agree. Yeah, we're in this in a commercial sense because we want to agree. We want to both leave this better for the fact that we've decided how to do something. I think that's why it's a bit different to crisis. But anyway, that's me. So if you, then I, that's your core piece to take away. Swapsies, tradables, trading, when we're talking about negotiation. Final part then is learning and growth. Learning and growth. So here, this is all about having a growth mindset. Carol Dweck talks about growth mindset as opposed to fixed. Fixed, no, can't tell me anything. I know what I'm doing here. I'm one of the best salespeople in the world. Yeah. I've come across a lot of people who can't be told anything, and they guess what? They're right. They're right. Yeah. However, when you plot them on the Dunning-Kruger curve, what you might see here is that they have very, very high confidence, but their competence is not so high. Yeah. Because they don't know so much. They don't know what they don't know, and that's why confidence is just sky high. That's often called peak amount stupidity. Because what you then find is as people start to learn more and uncover more and realize there's different ways to do stuff, confidence can dip a little bit. Yeah, so it actually come down before building that back up. So yeah, I'm often aware of where people might be on that. Because for me, and that wasn't the one to take away, the takeaway is to just think of selling as it's something that we can continually get better at. There are so many elements that if we can add them to how we operate, we can get better at it. I think some people just get totally blinkered. It's like, no, I've got enough now, don't need to do any more. The analogy I use here is like of a drum set, big concert drummer. If you've got like a stick, a drumstick and with a snare drum, you're tapping away on that, tick, 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 tick. It's not a brilliant performance. Big drummer, rock band, he's going to have various different drums, different cymbals, different things that they can play to get different sounds as and when the song's requiring it. I mean, take it crazy. It's sort of like Tommy Lee will strap his drum kit onto a roller coaster and go upside down and have flashing lights and stuff all over it because it's just improving the performance. There's more bits to it. And I think that analogy works really quite nicely in sales, that we can keep adding bits, getting better at them. And the more we've got, the more accomplished we can be, the better that overall performance can be. So there we go. There we go. There's the ethical model where I've picked out a couple of little bits from each of those. Yeah. Questions? lead with a 4, value is a mystery, buyer safety, and the perfect close. Think like a partner. If you, then I, and then a growth mindset. That's what the ethical selling model is about. Yeah, that's what I cover in the book. There's more tactics, there's more tools, there's more techniques to do that.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Today podcast with me, your host, Fred Copestake. I hope you've enjoyed what you heard today. If you did, please get in touch and hit subscribe. And remember, you can take the Collaborative Selling Scorecard for free to check out how your sales approach works in today's environment. You'll find it in the show notes.